How you doing? My name is Paul. I picked up this 1997 International mobile command truck and it was cranking, but no one had any answers as to why it wasn't getting fuel. Well, to make a long story short, after much prayer, and we determined that it must be the fuel pump, okay? So we were making good progress and then we ran into this big problem. So I'm about to show you what we went through and the miraculous solution to what could have been. Well, I'm not an accomplished mechanic. I know my way around pretty good, but this was probably past my pay grade. And I prayed. I asked God for help, and He gave it to me. So let me show you the process of what happened on this fuel. This motor, okay, on the T444E. Again, this is a 1996 7.3 liter. Right down here in the valley is where the fuel pump mounts in. Right into that hole. Okay, and then it rides on the camshaft. Now, looks like pretty straightforward, right? We pull off some fuel lines. We pull apart the turbo to gain some access. I didn't show y'all, but there's a banjo bolt right here that mounts into, threads into the end of the fuel pump. And that was a trick. I thought I was gonna have to pull off this whole assembly of the turbo, but thankfully they made this curve right here, and you can get on a number 32 open end wrench is what I used. Give a little turn and then I got it off. Here's a shot of the fuel pump with the lines on it, and then you can see that banjo bolt in the back. A 32-inch box end wrench got it real good. It wasn't too bad. Here's some of the fuel lines. Replace these hoses. Since they're painted blue and the engine was blue, they look like original, so I'm gonna be replacing all those little finger size. The turbo came apart in these 3 sections, is all the space I needed. So really that was all that I needed to do to get access. Now I'm gonna show you what was almost my worst nightmare. Here's the fuel pump. This is the old fuel pump. As far as I know, this is the original one. So it's got 111,000 miles, almost 12,000 hours on the motor, and 30 years old, almost 30. And what happens with these is as it sits into that engine block, you've got, this is all cast aluminum, okay? And this little piston rides up and down, little valve off the cam. But when you go to take this out, as I found out the hard way, it doesn't want to come out. There, water and oil and things get down in the valley of that engine. Where it's located, I believe it's a bad engineering design. They made this for, I think, since 94 to 2005, approximately 10 years they made this design, but corrosion can happen. And I pulled and pulled, once we loosened these 2 bolts, pulled and pulled, and I couldn't get it. So one guy online I found, he put some screwdrivers under here, he tried to give it even pressure. I tried that, and I finally worked it so much that it snapped. So the aluminum literally snapped in half, and the little plunger or the piston broke in half inside. You can see that clean break on the aluminum on the outside, and right inside that piston shaft is what I was going to attempt to weld the nut to. Well, here was the slug, aluminum on the outside and the little head, mushroom head of the piston on the inside. So my wire welder would weld to the metal okay, but of course not the aluminum. And I didn't want to damage the block or weld to the sides. So by putting that nut there, it kind of protected. I set a nut on top that was slightly smaller that I knew that I could push both up and down once I attached that rod to it. So we filled that center hole, just held it in there in good faith, hoping that the wire would mesh with the nut and the leftover shaft. It got glowing hot, and about 5-6 seconds I took it off and it looked real good. Then I just added some more. Then I went ahead and welded on another foot-long piece of rod so that I could have something to grab onto, pull it in and out, and that's what you'll see in the next photo. So I didn't take a video of the welding, but I'm hoping that by looking at this, you'll see what we did. Obviously, our concern was that the broken off shaft and head of the valve, the piston, would drop into the motor, or the other part of this aluminum piece, and be irretrievable. And then of course we'd have to take off the top end, and it'd be quite a headache. So you saw from the photos how the shaft was there. What we did, and I recommend it for anybody, is what we always do. It says in Luke 18:1 in the scriptures, King James, that men ought always to pray and not to faint. I felt like fainting, but we prayed, and we prayed again, and I just had peace, and I just said, God, may your will be done. You know my desires to get this piece out. I need your help, Lord. And God is always faithful. So I started getting some advice. I called my son in Oklahoma. He gave me some advice. We were going to drill it out, but it's so hard to drill down with the idea of nothing can fall in. Again, this is aluminum. This is the piece that we got out, and you can probably guess what we did. But my dad is the one I went to for advice, and at 85, he's been working on machinery his whole life, and there was wisdom there. He said, Paul, why don't you put a nut on top? Because we had that little bit of metal. This is the head, and then the shaft was just sticking there. Take your 110 welder over here. I just took my little Harbor Freight 110 wire welder because I didn't need any big welds. It was already dark, but we just had the lamp and we're focused on that point. Square up this nut, and we needed to make it just a little bit smaller than the hole so that I could have an up-down plunger action if I needed to work it. Anyway, we got the nut lined up. This piece wasn't on there. It was just a nut. We welded it, let it fill the center. I wish I would have filmed it for y'all, but I didn't. But it just took about 5-6 seconds to fill it. It got glowing, and it connected. Then I came back and put this piece on so that I'd have, because it was still susceptible to dropping in. I didn't know if this was just, as you can see, this is free spinning. This could have just dropped off, but it held in there and it stuck. And boy, was I grateful. Then I put some blaster, some solvent in there to loosen it up a little bit more. And when we pulled up and down, kept working with it. Of course, if it had dropped in, it wouldn't have gone very far because I got this shaft. It would have been safe. And boom, finally, we got out the piece. And I said, Lord, hallelujah, thank you for that. I want to show you what I tried first before that. You can see the welding was hard deep down in the valley there. It was nighttime. This was actually the first one. It kind of grabbed and it pulled up so that just about this much of the valve there, of the piston, was ahead. So then I could set this nut, this bigger nut here, I was able to set that over the top, and then I knew we were probably going to have success. So I gave myself like a 5% chance to do this, and I told my son I actually give up. I'm just going to sell it. I'm just going to hire somebody. It's past my pay grade, and honestly, it is past my pay grade. but God help me. So new pump's coming tomorrow, and maybe I'll make one final video with that put in, and we'll see if she fires up. So that's all I have to do. Remember, get wisdom from your elders and pray. Involve the Lord. He cares about the little things.